permits me to humbly intimate to you that this session is recorded. So at any point in time that you feel like putting on your video on or you want to say anything, please do so with the realization that we are recording you and the meeting will be uploaded on the YouTube channel for others to have access that couldn't make the meeting. So this is an indirect consent. The fact that you are still remaining on the meeting and you want to go on with the tutorial, you are putting on your video or saying anything at any point in time, it means that you are aware that we are recording you and we are going to be uploading on YouTube channel. Also, I must actually give credit to MSSN Lab. They are responsible for the tutor that's going to be taking us from, I think, the Department of Economies on GEG 501, and then ICESA is in partnership to make sure that we have a seamless tutorial section. On this note, I'll be handing over to Mr. Yusuf at the backing to take us on the ride. Thank you so much. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Taiwo. Thank you very much. So, okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, good. I think I will need to apologize because I was unable to complete my slide. But notwithstanding, I will try as possible to use, wherever I stop, I will try as possible to use the class notes or perhaps the comprehensive note we have. So before I start this course, there are basic things we need to know, like few terminologies and few concepts we need to know, and what is the course all about. Sorry. So we have basic facts we need to know about the course. I think everyone can see my screen.
Clearly, sir.
Okay. So we need to understand comprehensively the theoretical aspect of the course. Like each concept, we need to understand every single theory regarding each concept we'll be learning, and that is why it is called engineering economics. The fact that it is called engineering economics only addresses the fact that we'll be relating some mathematical principle and at the same time some basic economics theoretical principles too. Then it is also important to synchronize relevant formulas with the theory. Yeah, very much important. We need to try as much as possible to relate every single formula in each aspect with the theoretical concept too. Then most times the exam is always in objective and theoretical format, most times subjective or objective format. So we have less tension we have less tension. Okay. So firstly, we'll be looking at module 1. So according to the course outline, the module 1 is covering the engineering economics, the general scope, the concept of micro and macroeconomics. We'll be looking at the theory of demand, the demand function, law of demand. Then we'll also be looking at elasticity of demand, law of supply, and elasticity of supply. Then we'll be looking at determination of equilibrium price under perfect competition. We'll also be looking at the theory of production. So I think someone is saying something. So let's start with the nature and scope of engineering. Yeah, pardon me, I will need to share some theoretical concept too, because there's no way we will be learning about business without talking about one or two theoretical concepts. So the whole of engineering economics is like a branch, or is a branch of economics, such that it addresses the analysis before project, the analysis during project, and the analysis after project. And as a matter of fact, project is one of the major concept in engineering. There's nothing you want to do, some element of project work will be attached to that. So how do you now manage the expenses? How do you now manage the credit? How do you manage the income? And how do you manage every single financial part of the whole project? And that's what we call the engineering economics. So as a discipline, it's focused on the branch of economics known as microeconomics. Now, microeconomics looks at the study of economics in a small scale, and that is why it is like one-on-one conversation of economics. Whenever you are now dealing with economies in a big scale, then you'll be dealing with macro economies. So that one deals with how a government implements law, how a government imposes concepts, how a government addresses some financial principles in a region. So economics is basically subdivided into two sessions, into two categories rather. You have the microeconomics and the macro. Now, I've, I've explained initially that the micro is looking at the small scale aspect of the economics, while macro is looking at the bigger scale concept. But technically, micro is the study of individuals and business decisions. And when you look at businesses, sometimes it is actually a formation of individuals. So when people are taking decisions within that same circle, then we are considering microeconomics. But if it is within a government and a country, within a state and a region, within a local government and an entity, then we are dealing with macroeconomics. So I feel these are objective areas or objective questions they can always ask. So we'll now go to theory of demand. Now, theory of demand. The word demand is actually used everywhere, and is a very important concept we need to understand. So what demand is addressing is in terms of quantity, in terms of price, and in terms of the time. So those three factors must be key into the definition of, or must actually appear in the definition of demand. So we need to address the quantity, we need to address the price, and we also need to address the time bound. Because if you are demanding for something without a time limit, then it is not a demand per se. It is just your want, it's just a desire. But if you are demanding for something, there will be a time bound, there will be a time limit where you must equally achieve that. And that is what is regarded to as effective demand. For you to have an effective demand, there must be absolute willingness and absolute responsiveness to get what you want. So keywords we'll be looking at is price and time in demand. So by definition, we have demand is the quantity of goods that consumers are willing and able to purchase at various prices during a given period of time. Think demand function. Now, this is where the mathematical aspect of demand comes in. Though I have about 2 or 3 more slides to go, then I'll share the normal notes so we can address that. So basically, demand function is an equation that actually relates the quantity of the concept demand and other factors that actually affects demand. Now, other factors might come in different formats. Other factors could be the price, other factors could be the cost of transportation, other factors could be the income level of individuals, other factors could be um, the imposed financial government policy, anyhow. But whenever you are trying to compare other factors affecting demand to the quantity demanded, then we are dealing with demand function. But so as to streamline the whole concept, because it's somehow impossible for them to give us lot of factors affecting that. However, it is possible, but it is rare. So majorly, the factors will be dealing with will be the price and the income level of people buying it, but majorly the price. And that's why you see in most cases that your demand function is always in terms of P, and where the P signifies price. So where the P signifies price. So by definition, it's just a mathematical expression showing the relationship between the quantity demanded and the factors affecting them. And mathematically, we have QD equals to AP minus D plus Y. Now, this AD minus AP minus D plus Y is just a simple expression to address how demand function looks like. Quite similar to supply too, because what is affecting supply is quite similar to what will be affecting demand, but some kind of breaks. But one thing is price intersects between demand and supply. So price actually affects demand, price also affects supply. More reason you'll be seeing the function of supply to or supply function to be in terms of P. Demand function will also be in terms of P, and as such we'll be moving to equilibrium. But let me still pen, I'm still going there. Let's analyze this demand function. So QD is the quantity demanded, P is the price, Y is the income, A comma D are the coefficient of respective variables we have there. However, in most cases we'll be given the expression, the value for income. Yeah, the value for income. What as such your demand function will be in terms of price. Yeah. So QD will be in terms of only P. And sometimes your P, your demand function could come in any kind of function. It could be polynomial, it could be linear, it could be quadratic, as case may be. But the main aim is you just need to solve or substitute the value of price at every interval. So I think this is clear. Sorry. So are we clear with this?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll be going to law of demand and its curve. On this same slide, I'll stylishly be explaining law of supply and its curve. But though it's only demand I have on this page, stylishly explain law of supply and its curve. Then after that, I'll stylishly also be explaining equilibrium. Equilibrium. So law of demand, in a simple logic, it actually addresses a phenomenon such that when we have increase in price, we will definitely be having um, decrease in quantity demand. And I think we can relate to this better. When the price of something is high, definitely will be having the people wanting to buy in it to be low. Okay. Well, so when the price too is low, we'll have more people to opt for it. So the curve of demand is expressed definitely in y and x as usual, but the y is the price, while the x is the quantity demanded, and the slope will always be negative. How? When one of the variable is increasing, the other is decreasing. So when the price is increasing, then the demand is decreasing. Such there will be fall. It's going to form a negative straight line graph. Okay, so let's take this chart as case study. We have the price. We also have the demand of mangoes. So the price is in rupees, or it can be in any currency. So we have when the price of 1 kg is 5, then 4 kg to sorry when the price of 1 kg is 5 rupees, then 2 kg is 4 rupees, 3 kg is 3 rupees, 4 kg is two rupees, and 5 kg is 1 rupee. So if we ask to draw a demand curve for this, then we'll be connecting the price, the values of just like a normal straight line graph, and you have a resulting diagram like this. So all those points of intersection where you have the A1, the A2, the A3, the A4, the A5 is actually the fixed point where both are equal. Like where the price intersecting with the quantity demanded. So you connect each of those points, and it's forming a negative graph. So if it is forming a negative graph, it means the slope of the graph will be negative. The slope of the graph will be negative. Okay. So let me also explain law of supply. Law of supply is, if you look at law of demand actually affects the consumers in virtually all ramification, but law of supply affects the producer. So if you have if you have the price to be increased of what you want to supply, definitely you'll be gingered to supply more. And if you are supplying more, it means you'll be having greater production. As such, the law of supply is the higher the price, the higher the quantity supply. So if the price is more, you will be willing to supply more. But if the price is low, you might find it difficult, or perhaps you may not have that zeal to supply as much as possible. So if you have to look at that curve, the first one is increasing, the second one too is increasing. As such, is going to form a positive slope, right? So if it is forming a positive slope, it means it is forming a positive graph too. So when you have increase in the price, you're automatically having increase in um, increase in its supply too. Now we have demand, we have supply. So let me also address the supply function. Supply function too is also expressed with quantity supply. Whenever you are expressing quantity supply with prices, so with factors affecting supply, and which price is also one of the major factors affecting that. So when you see questions on demand function, or when you see questions on supply function, you should not be and you are also seeing other variables or other values in the same question. So don't be too surprised that okay, we only need price, we only need this, we only need that. No, you are expected to add up those factors. Okay, let's take for instance, we have a question. Uh, if QD is given as 2P minus Y minus G, where P is the price, Y is the income, and G is the cost of transportation. And the same question, you are not giving the value of price, you are not giving the but you have you know the value of income, and you also know the value of cost of transportation. So what you just need to do is to express your quantity supply based on the initial expression QS equals to 2P plus Y plus G. So what you just need to do is to input the value of Y, also input the value of G, then you'll be having the formula for quantity supply to be in terms of P only. So only if you are giving the value of P, we allow you to get the complete value of quantity supply. Okay. And sometimes we might also be given questions such that we will be expected to linearize. Since we are all in engineering, if we can recall G was not PHS, yeah, PHS 103 practical, you notice that there are sometimes they will give us equations such that you will be expected to linearize. So you'll be expected to linearize in order to get which is going to be the gradient, which is going to be the intercept. Similar questions can also pop or can also come out from demand and supply too. So you might be given an expression such that you just need to linearize and get which of the stuff is going to be this, is going to be y-axis, which is going to be x-axis, and which of the stuff is going to be intercept. But in most cases, in most cases rather, it will always be in terms of QS equals to the sum of other factors. It could be price plus income plus transportation. Now, after establishing the uh, the concept of the demand function and the concept of supply function, then it is now necessary for us to intersect them. So intersecting them means we want to get a common price that actually regulates the quantity demand and the quantity supply, and that is what we call the equilibrium price. And if you check the syllabus, you will notice that we are asked to also understand the concept of equilibrium in a perfect market, in a perfect competition. Yeah, in a perfect competition, you say the word perfect um, is just addressing the fact that it is not a monopoly. It is not a monopoly. Okay, let's take for instance in this country now, if we are to look at the production of cement, we want to give utmost I don't know how I'm going to put the English utmost like we want to give preference to Dangote, yeah, Dangote, all those Lafarge, Boa that are just coming up. So you want to give preference to Dangote. Now, if you are giving preference to Dangote, it means You are no longer dealing with a perfect market, a perfect competition. A perfect competition is, okay, let's take for instance, um, Biggie. When Biggie, Big, and Cola were um, actually established some level of argument at some point, you will notice that Biggie was able to scale through because of the concept perfect competition. So when the word perfect competition has been established, it means every individual or every seller or every business owner has the right to um to make decisions, to give policy, and to also produce whatever thing he or she feels like. Now, with that concept of perfect, it means the price affecting demand. We want to look at what price will be affecting demand and what price will also be affecting supply. And that's what we call the equilibrium price. So in a simple logic, equilibrium price is you equating the function, the demand function and the supply function. That is QD is equals to QS. QD is equals to QS. Um, okay. So QD is equals to QS. So this is what we call equilibrium. Remember, for the electrical system, say equilibrium is when equilibrium AC circuit, or let's say resonance in AC circuit is when XL equals to XC. Quite similar to this, equilibrium in demand is so in demand and supply basically is when function demanded is equals to supply function. So let's not take, for instance, we are giving demand function in terms of quadratic, and we're also giving supply function in terms of linear. It means we'll be having a quadratic function at the end of the day, where we'll be getting two values of p. So you need to equate this to this, bring everything to one side, then solve quadratically to get the respective values um, of p. Then after getting the value of p, note what you are expected to find is to get quantity supply and quantity demanded. So after intersecting both to get the price, then you're expected to substitute the value of price, which definitely should be positive. You're expected to substitute the value of price back to the quantity, the function for quantity supply and function for quantity demand, in order to get at this also price, or at this price, this is the quantity demanded and this is the quantity supply, and that is why it is called a perfect market. And that equally helps to regulate the market structure generally. So when you are doing that, you are giving every single seller privilege to bring out his or her own policy and his or her own principles, which is assumed to be one of the best. But according to the syllabus, we are expected to dwell more on demand, because demand actually affects more of consumer. And as an engineer, we tend more to render services. That means we give attention to consumers. We give uh, we addresses the challenges of consumers. So as such, we will need to look at how we regulate their demand, and that's why we are looking at demand in this um, in this lesson. So number one is we will need to look at how can we regulate the price when it comes to demand, and that is what will give rise to price elasticity of demand. How we are going to look at these. Okay, let's take for instance, in a big company wants to go into a construction project, and um, definitely those big companies will need to get um, quotations, or perhaps let me say we need to make it open such that different young companies can apply to do the project. So if they are giving them privilege to do that, it means the big company will be looking at, okay, for this company, hey, trying to share his or her proposal, the financial cost is fine, the mode of implementation is fine, but this is not fine. So let's check the other one. So they will need to scale all through. So how can we do that? It's through the help of price elasticity of demand. And the formula for price elasticity of demand in a simple term is proportional change in quantity demanded over proportional change in price. Proportional change in quantity demanded over proportional change in price. And most times, whenever we are dealing with a ratio, it's it is always equals to a constant, or is always equals to a variable. Now, the variable here is the coefficient of price elasticity of demand. So your coefficient could now come in 5 different ways. The coefficient could come in 5 different ways. The first is you can have the coefficient to be equals to infinity. You can have the coefficient to be equals to 0. You can have the coefficient to be equals to 1. You can have the coefficient to be greater than 1. You can also have the coefficient to be less than 1. So if the coefficient of price elasticity of demand is equals to 0, that means completely 0. It means it is perfectly inelastic. It is perfectly. So since it is 0, and those extreme cases we need to put into consideration will be 1 and 0. So whenever the coefficient of price elasticity of demand is equals to 0, then it means it is perfectly inelastic. Because sometimes questions might come such that you need to interpret whatever answers you are getting, and more reason we are still dealing with micro level, because micro, whenever you give someone a project, micro, remember from the definition, it involves interaction between business owners, between individuals. So if you are giving someone an assignment, it is important for you to get feedback. So it is important for you to get feedback. So the feedback is more like the interpretation of the assignment given to the person. So if you solve a question, then the feedback is going to be the interpretation of the question. So whenever your price elasticity of demand is equals to 0, I said it's perfectly inelastic. But if it is equals to 1, then definitely it is unit elasticity. If it is equals to 1, it means it is unit elasticity. But if it is equals to infinity, then it is perfectly elastic. Perfectly elastic. So I think I still need to complete this slide. I'm very much sorry because I was unable to complete the slide. That's why I'm not equally moving further. So whenever
Please,
your E,
sorry for interrupting. I think you can just share. I don't know if you have the material given to us. You can share that and probably be given summary. And also,
okay,
if you need to write, you can actually share whiteboard. There's a whiteboard on the Zoom where you can write your equation or anything for better convenience. So you can navigate, share the material given in class, and each subheading you can summarize and let us know what we need to know. So you don't have to
okay,
worry about the slide. Is that clear, sir?
okay, yeah.
All right, sir. Yes. You can go ahead, sir.
Okay, I will do that after explaining the price elasticity of demand. So
All right,
whenever
sir.
the coefficient of price elasticity of demand is equals to 1, we call that perfectly, we call that unit elasticity. Whenever it is equals to 0, perfectly inelastic demand. Then whenever it is equals to infinity, we call that perfectly elastic demand. Now, whenever it is greater than 1, then we call that relatively elastic demand. Well, if it is less than 1, we call that relatively inelastic demand. So those are the 5 cases we can have when it comes to price elasticity of demand. Okay. So the next one we'll be going into is theory of production. Yeah. So the next one we're going is theory of production. So let me share the main material. So I don't know if everyone can see my screen. Okay, let me remove this. I don't know if everyone can see my screen.
Clearly, sir, but you might want to
I can
zoom
see your
in.
screen.
Can you zoom in, please?
Okay.
All right, fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. One beautiful thing is the material is contains a lot of explanation, but I will try as possible to summarize as much as possible. Now, when you call something production, it means you are transforming raw materials into finished goods. That means your input, which is assumed to be raw, you are transforming to output, which is assumed to be finished goods. But in engineering, we are not looking at the concept of production like that. We'll be looking at the concept of production in a way that encompasses every single activities we'll be doing in order to ensure the easy and fair transportation of the goods to the final location. So let me break it down. We have the input to the raw materials. Yeah, yeah, perfectly gotten. Now let me paint a scenario. We 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 had the opportunity to go to Ajaokuta, so where they actually extract raw steel. So now getting that raw steel is the first stage, which is the input. Now we now want to produce the raw steel into different components or into different substances. Now the question mark is having a machine at that same location at Ajaokuta trying to process the raw steel into a processed steel or into a steel we can equally use for something else, trying to process, moving it from one point to another, transporting it, analyzing the cost, looking at everything that surrounds the implementation or converting it from raw to the final good is what we regard there to as production in engineering. So if you are given a project from the start of your project down to the point of commissioning or perhaps factory assessment test or field assessment test, whichever one you want to do, you you are still revolving around the concept of production. So we are not only looking at the input and the output. So those are the important theories, and that's the summary of everything I explained. So now, in a market where we assume to be perfect, there is definitely you should expect more of competition, more of competition in the sense that you have many people producing similar goods, trying to use similar strategy, trying to reach out to people using similar ways, and that is the concept of competition. As such, as an engineer, we also need to look at the concept behind that, which is called the Isoquant. Remember, the word ISO in engineering means constant. So whenever you use like isobaric, isochoric, isovolumetric, it means constant this, constant that, constant. So ISO quant means constant quantities. So that means at every point or the other, the rate of production is the same, the challenge of production is the same, the this for the quantity you have, the things surrounding the quantity you want to produce are actually the same. So most times they only ask question on draw the isoquant of this so chart, draw tell us why this is this, tell us why that is that. So I'll try to give explanation on them too. So that is whenever is either you see isoquant or you see it as equal product cost. So okay, so let's take this table as case study. Now have various factors combination to produce given level of output. So factor A, factor combination. For A, we have factor X to 1 and factor Y to be to be 12. Now, one logic behind this isoquant is that when you have two variables, when you have two factors as it is now, it is a must for one to be decreasing and for one to be increasing. Now, having such scenario will help equate and balance the whole structure and will equally make the equal production. Now, the way we have uh, this factor x to be 1, then factor y to be 12, will equally balance a state to produce a given output. Perhaps the output the company wants to produce is 20. So with this factor x producing 12, factor x producing 1, factor y producing 12 will equally help to achieve the 20 output. So at every levels or the order, the 20 output is the goal, and all must equally attain. So whenever they are attaining such level, we call that ISO curve. So whenever they are attaining such level, we call that isocurve. So how do you now draw isocurve? You draw isocurve by relating every single factors together. Now here we have two outputs, and in most cases for now, we'll only be given two outputs. We'll be given factor X, so that factor A, factor B, factor or any factor in relation to another factor. Now, how do you now know? How do you now differentiate between those two factors, and how do you know which will be on the y-axis and which is going to be on the x-axis? For the y-axis, you will definitely have the quantity decreasing. Don't Not because this is factor y, that is why we want to choose this as y on the y-axis. But it is because if you check the quantity produced by y, it is actually decreasing. So as such, it will be on the vertical axis. But if you check factor x, the quantity produced is actually increasing. So we'll put that on the horizontal axis, which at the end of the day, your resulting curve will be negative. So your resulting curve will be negative. This is different from demand. Demand, you have a straight line graph, but here you have a curve, which means you're expected to join every single point on the graph sheet together. And remember, if you want to find the slope of a curve, you are expected to, if you want to find the slope of a curve, you are expected um, to draw a right angle of any size, which the hypotenuse is tangential to the curve. Then you have respective values for x1, y1, x2, and y2. Then you find the slope vertical upon horizontal. Okay. So let's see the resulting curve. So you can see that on the vertical axis, we have factor y to be we have factor y to be on the vertical, then factor x to be on the horizontal. So when we have y to be 2, then x is 5. Let's confirm that. When we have y to be 2, x to be 5, I feel we can complete this. We can look at it after this session. Then the explanation, we have the explanation. Now, good. Now, this second diagram addresses the fact that there might be cases, and that's why there's no way you explain engineering economics giving um, without addressing some basic theoretical concepts. Now, there might be different output level. For instance, if I have about 5 companies working on a project, another 3 companies working on the same project, another 5 companies working on another project. Now, each of those projects will have its own pros and cons. We have its own deadline, we have its own level of achievement. We also have its own level of output. My expectation is the 3 companies working on this should equally produce the same output. That's the expectation. And that's why I call perfect. These three companies should have the same output. These 5 companies should have the same output on that project, which means there might be stages in your output level. And that is what you are saying, that for the first case, we have all of them to be producing 20 output. For the second case, all of them to be producing 40, and for the 60, 80. However, we can be asked to find the gradient of the curve at any point or the other. Similar principle is applicable too. What you just need to do is look at draw your right angle as usual, make your hypotenuse to be tangential to the curve. eh, Although we are not expected to get the same answer. Yes, we are not expected to get the same answer because the way I'll be drawing my right angle triangle will definitely be different from the way anybody else might be drawing. But just ensure that it is big enough in order to reduce um, some precision, effect. So make it big enough. That's the explanation you also see there. If you can read through. So another thing we'll be looking at is this marginal rate of technical substitution. This marginal rate addresses the whole concept of that same production. To balance the whole state, we need to give preference to what is going out, exo, and what is coming in, perhaps endo. Let's not look at it this way. In law of heat, let me take it to heat. Sorry, we are meant to know that heat loss by the hot body is equals to heat gain by the cold body. That is in a calorimeter. I'm quite sorry I'm using all these because we are all engineering students. So here we are not looking at heat loss. We are not looking at heat gain. We are looking at the output loss and the output gain. The output loss and the output gain. Now, from this table,
I don't understand.
eh? Hello, I think someone is saying something.
Yeah, I don't understand the concept of heat loss and heat gain.
No, but
What does that?
no, I'm only trying to analyze how we intercept things for balance, for something to be balanced. Why we did that in it was because we want the whole system to be balanced. Now we want to equally balance the two factors we have, X and Y, having different outputs. So what we need to address is the output gain is equals to the output loss. So I'm trying to give a similitude of that, which is the heat loss and heat gain. Yeah, it has nothing to do with this, but I'm only trying to relate and find it more. I want to explain it better. Yeah, it has nothing
Okay.
to do with
Thank you very much.
okay. So we have for the factor X and factor Y. Now, if you have to look at factor Y, definitely there is reduction in output. So definitely the loss of output is affecting Y. Why the gain of output is affecting S. So the output gain, okay, let me go on. So the output gain is given as change in Y, and the output loss rather for Y is given as change in Y times the marginal production rate. For the marginal production rate, in most cases, you'll be given the Y for the gain, which is for X, will be change in X times the marginal production rate for X. So if you have to solve that, if you have to reduce, if you have to bring everything back to ratio, that means change in Y. Come in, let me use the annotation. So you have to change in Y. MP for Y is equals to the change in X MP for X. Now, if you have to look at this, you notice that if you want to convert all of them to ratio, then you'll be having change in Y over change in X is equals to MPX over MPY, right? Mathematically, if you want to change this, you are changing Y times or increase in Y times MPY is equals to increase in X times MPX. If you want to convert all of them to ratio, you'll be having change in Y over change in X, and that will be MPX over MPY. Abi? Okay, so I want yeah. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So if that principle is true, then let's go back to this diagram. You will notice that the slope of this curve for 20 will be changing y upon changing x. So we can assume that is either we are given the increment of y and the increment of x, or we are given their marginal production rate for x and marginal production rate for y. Whichever one you are given, you can always use that to find the slope of the curve. Okay, and this is the formula. So everything I've explained here, you can read the whole text. So this is the formula. Changing y upon changing x equals to mpx upon mpy. This is the law I was referring to the other time. Loss of output equals to gain in output. Here we are not looking at perhaps his loss or his gain. Here we're looking at the output rate. So changing y times mpy equals to changing x times mpx, where changing y over changing x is also regarded to as the slope, and mpx divided by mpy is also regarded to as the slope. So whichever one you are given, you can always um, get your respective slope formula from that. And this diminishing marginal rate means, yeah, it will get to a point if if you have this company discharging at so rate, this company discharging at so rate, company discharging at so rate, it will get to a point where their level of discharge or their rate of discharge will keep decreasing, or will be decreasing gradually. So at that point, they've attained their activation stage. So it will be coming down, and that's what we call the diminishing marginal rate. So it will be at that time, it will be necessary for you to get a substitute. That means to get someone that, or another company that will substitute in order to produce effectively. And that's what most of the companies usually do. And they will get a graduate at a very tender age. I don't want to use the word use. Ensure that the graduate is relevant to the work they are doing at that very tender age, give them high level of production, assist them to attain maximum output in most of their works. When that is achieved, it will get to a point where the service of that graduate may not be needed as much as before. So what they will just do is either the person is sacked or the person becomes a partner in the company. That's if there is opportunity to be a partner. So it will get to a point, everything will be decreasing regardless of how efficient you are at the initial stage. Okay, so we'll be for properties of isoquant. Properties number one is no two isoquant curve can intersect. If you check the first diagram, you have all of them to be independent, parallel. No two isoquant curve can intersect. And the second one is for balanced state to occur, a particular quantity must be increasing and a particular quantity must be decreasing. That's for balanced state to occur. That's for the ISO to work. Okay. So another aspect we'll be looking at in the first module is law of variable proportion. Law of variable proportion. Now, this law of variable proportion is what if we're fortunate to do economies back in secondary school, this law of variable proportion is what we known as law of diminishing return. Law of diminishing return. And definitely, what's law of diminishing?
So
The
is it
more
for my end or is it general? Can anyone hear him?
law,
Yes, we
I
can hear
can
him.
hear him.
yeah, law of diminishing return. So which says the more and more a variable or a component is used, then the z to the let me define as a layman. The more and more something is used, then it will get to a point where that thing will be saturated. The willingness to get it will no longer be there. Um the zeal to get it will no longer be there. As such, there will be diminishing effect in its output rate. So what is expected of the company to do is to change their strategy. And more reason you see like I said now, their nylon is no longer the same. So they just have to, although they might not be able to change the content, maybe they will need to add a bit of Chapman to their content. Is their choice just to change their strategy. But the fact still remains, you've got to be dynamic in any process. So let's take for instance, um, you're opportune to have a project on this and you do it this way using your best fit. If you're opportune to get another project, use your best fit. But if you have the opportunity to be dynamic as much as possible, please do. And more reason I equally like some of the works of these Arab contractors, this civil engineering company. Yeah, they do things differently. They do things in relation to what suits that particular environment. So if we equally inculcate that or imbibe that, definitely won't be affected by this law of diminishing return or law of variable proportion. So it is when you are no longer getting high level of satisfaction, then you keep considering different things. You keep considering, okay, let me try this, let me do this, let me do that, let me do this. Okay, so law of diminishing return is what is regarded to as that, and this is this law of diminishing return. They are quite similar in your classical economies. Okay, so for the assumption, because the way we have assumption in some principles in engineering, we also have an assumption in some principles too in the financial world. So as an engineer, we need to look at those areas that concerns us. Yeah, sorry, 1 minute, please. Let me message. Okay, so the first one is the state of technology is assumed to be given and unchanged. If there is any improvement in technology, the marginal and the average product may rise instead of diminish. Yeah, that was the same thing I explained too initially. If you are changing your concept, if you ensure maximum improvement in what you are doing, then definitely you won't be affected by this law of diminishing effect. So secondly, there must be some input whose quantity is kept fixed. It is the only way that we can alter the factors of proportion and know its effect on output. Yeah, this is also similar. If you'll be starting a company, I'm quite sorry I'm making everything so practical so we understand the whole concept. If you are starting a company, definitely there will be some things where you'll be getting that is called fixed assets. You are getting them, you are no longer changing. So what you just need to do is to keep preparing. Let's say, for instance, I want to start a photocopying business. Then I get a photocopying machine, a very big one, which I can use for 11 years or 10 years without any defect. But the fact is, giving a span of 11 years or giving a span of 12 years is not a yardstick for you to wait until after 11 years or 12 years before you attend to the machine. You can always give a periodic check or a yearly check, or um, every 2 years. It could be periodic. Yeah, you can be checking it, looking at, okay, let me adjust this. By doing so, you are increasing your level of productivity. Now, instead of ordinarily, you never can tell if after 5 years or 6 years the machine will develop some fault issue. But you checking it regularly, giving it a constant check, will allow the initial indicated span of the machine to be true. As such, you won't be the law of diminishing return won't affect the machine. And I think the third one too, we can also go through that. Okay, so I think I need to show a diagram. Very good. Okay. Now, when I was explaining demand, I said your graph will always be in terms of, so you are drawing your graph on the vertical axis to be price and the horizontal axis to be quantity. But here you are drawing your resulting output on the vertical axis and the amount of variable factor on the horizontal output. So we look at the total production, the marginal production, and the average production. So when you call something total production, it means the overall effect after calculating your start point, your process point, and your end point. What you are getting is your total um production. But your marginal production is the point at which you attain the peak level, that the whole system is being energetic, the whole system is producing at a very high rate, the whole system is giving maximum output. So we call that marginal, and definitely average is the average of the whole scenario. So those are the three things basically we use to define um, law of diminishing return or law of yield proportion. Because you will need to, when you look at those concepts one after the other, you will see that it suits the appropriate definition of law of diminishing return. We said when something is not in its consistent state, then there will be reduction in the concept of demand. There will be reduction in the output rate. There will be reduction in the feedback mechanism. So as such, we need to look at what point will this happen? Is it at marginal? Is it at um, is it at total or at average? Is it at the end of the whole production is when people no longer find it interesting? Is it at when we have maximum use of our component, that is when they no longer find it interesting? Or is it at the average, that means on the average level, that people no longer find that interesting? We'll also look at that. So there are three stages. Now, the first stages is definitely from the start, from the production stage, and the second stage is process, and the last stage is the final production. So we'll now look at what point do we have deficiency, because that's what this chart is addressing. This chart is addressing you not to be affected by that diminishing law. Because if you can cop you can cop those things, or if you can do what is expected of you to do at every stage or the other, then you're having a smooth running of your business or of your project. So you check for stage one. Do I equally have any and do I equally have any qualms or any lapses? Check for stage two, and also check for stage three. Now, this point of inflection is put at stage one because in most cases, most often, stage one is always the most difficult stage to scale through. That means at the formation stage, it is most times the stage to that is quite difficult for you to scale through. Okay, so if you can scale through that point, then it means you have upper chances of scaling all through. Um, so we can also read through the notes to have perfect understanding about the stages. Okay. Okay, good. Now when we look at this diagram, remember when we did the marginal production, that MP, where we are trying to look at the slope under when we're trying to look at the slope under different output. I was explaining delta x upon delta y. This is delta y upon delta x equals to mpx upon mpy. Now similar concept is used there. So we'll now look at the effect of stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Now at stage 1, your production will be very, very low as usual because you're just starting. Regardless of how big you are starting, if your production is not low, then it means your rate of sales will be low. Because it's either you are starting big and you are reaching out to low people, or you are starting small, you're also reaching out to people which will be equivalent to the level at which you started. Okay, I don't know if you guys get that line. Regardless of how you are starting, there will still be lapses, there will still be shortfalls at the initial stage. And more reason you are seeing the production for the first one to be 100, second 200. So it keeps increasing. So the higher you go, the slimmer and the slimmer the level of effect will be. Okay, let's take for instance, I start with the production of 50 cartons of 50 cartons of Nutri-Milk. Let's take for instance, I start with 50 cartons of Nutri-Milk. Then as time goes on, I stylishly graduated into 100 cartons, 150 cartons. But me starting from the initial stage, I've been able to stress the market by getting more people, more people to demand for the product. Now, the more I have demand, the more I'll be willing to do what to produce, and as such, there will be corresponding increase in my production. So there will be corresponding increase. So you have 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. I can see the more you go, the more those values are actually increasing. The more they are increasing. Come, someone is writing. Okay, so the more those values are increasing, the more the slimmer the effect will be. Okay, now Coca-Cola has gotten to a point such that even though they are not producing per day, or let me use the word, the minimum they can be producing by day might not equally be up to the maximum of some companies. Okay, let me also use a poultry as case study. To some poultry farms, they might equally be producing up to, they might equally be rearing up to 15,000 birds. While some poultry might be rearing up to um, perhaps 1,000. Now tell me, who amongst those people will have absolute power to control the market? Definitely the one running the 15,000. And more reason, there will be lesser effect in some logistics. So the effect will be lesser the more you grow in terms of production. So that as such, you'll be going deep into the market structure. So we can also go through the material for better understanding. Yeah, we also need to know the factors of production and how it really affects some other concepts, the land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. There are individual rewards. For land, we have rent. For labor, we have salary or wages. For entrepreneur, we have profit. So we should look at it. It is also is stylishly compulsory that we look at those areas and how it really affects the economy of a state. Okay, good. Now, one of the diagram is this. So here they are trying to look at the effect of capital when it comes to the effect of capital on production and the effect of labor on production. So the effect of this, can you explain the total average and marginal production? Oh yeah, okay. What I was saying was for your total production, it means you want to look at the overall effect from the beginning of your production, during the processing level, and finally to the distribution level. So whenever you are looking at the whole concept that way, then we call that total production. But your marginal production is the point at which your production is maximum. The point at which your production is maximum is marginal. And lastly, the average. That means when you have your total, the you need at that average, you are comparing the fair part and the extreme part. Yeah. At this point, doing so nice. At this point, I think it's fair. At this point, it's not so good. So that's the average level. You are trying to compare every point or the other. I think this is the last part of the one wide for Moody 2. I'm very much sorry, Mr. Taiwo. Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir.
So yeah, I want to apologize because I equally have a meeting to attend to now. I don't know if we can reschedule to complete module 2 and module 3.
Okay. It's quite unfortunate that this is happening now, but then we see what we can work with, and because I must say that your class was exceptional. But before exams, we make sure that we have you to take module 2 and module 3. But regarding today's class, I will get back to you as soon as I can.
Okay.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. We're really grateful. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. So sorry, I think he needs to hop off the call now. If we can reschedule for another time today for module 2 and module 3, that would be perfect. But if not, definitely before exam, we're going to have module 2 and module 3. And also, I will try to make sure that module 1 is uploaded on the YouTube channel, Naisesa Unilag. The link will be broadcasted, so that should not be a problem. So if probably you miss anything or probably have network difficulties, you can always look it up on YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining. God bless.